Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us in our conversation on Obehi Podcast. Today, we are looking at the situation in Ukraine, the Russian-Ukraine conflict, and the impact that it's having on the African people. Of course, where the conflict is happening is far away, but where the serving effect is in many parts of the world. So today, we are going to be looking at the impact on Africa from the point of view of food and agriculture, because Ukraine and Russia are some of the top producers of cereal, of wheat, and wheat, of course, is part of the food that we eat always. Now, if you eat bread and things like that, so you know that where the raw material is coming from is far away. So since these are the dominant player in the commodity market, as the conflict is going on there, it's affecting a lot of people, African included. But that is not where we are going to stop. We are also going to be looking at the fact that Africa have a lot of possibility. We should actually be handicapped as it were. So I have the honor of talking with Dr. Ikechi. So Dr. Ikechi, thank you so much for joining us. Can you do a little presentation of yourself, maybe for those that are seeing you for the first time? I know that you'll be here in a matter of time. Please go.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi Ewanfo, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started into this episode.
Thank you very much, Mr. Obehi. I appreciate you for this opportunity again to feature in this series with respect to the crisis going on in Russia and Ukraine, between Russia and Ukraine, actually in Ukraine. My name is Dr. Ikechi Agbugba, and I'm an agroeconomist. I trained at the University of Nigeria, where I earned my bachelor's degree in agriculture, and also my master's degree and my PhD. I proceeded to the University of Fort Hare, South Africa, and where Professor Obehi mentored me on a smallholder agriculture in South Africa. And it was a collaborative study between Agricultural Research Council and Faculty of Agriculture. The aspect of agriculture, Faculty of Science and Agriculture at the university then. And I have also written so many articles touching on food and agroeconomics. And I'm a regular speaker in programs and conferences and webinars touching on how to transform Africa's economy through the agriculture sector. And I'm also a writer of novels and especially in line with marketing of food and agricultural commodities. I'm a Pan-Africanist.
That is very important. I like that part.
I'm a Pan-Africanist.
Okay.
I'm also a family man. I have a beautiful wife, Antonia, and she's my I'll call her my everything for now. But even though I have my family also where I come from, which has also contributed a lot to what I am today and where I am.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Ikechi. You see, I said I like the part where you were saying you are a Pan-Africanist. That is very important for us. You know that in this podcast, our main concentration is African diaspora and, of course, Africa. So, which means that when you start to talk about Pan-Africanism, it's very, very important for us that we try to underline it. All right. Now, before we started the conversation just now, you told me that you did a little bit of research to quickly find out what is happening, how it is affecting us, because actually it is affecting the African market the conflict in Ukraine. Would you like to share anything with us? What did you find about the effect of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine in the Africa market?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me just start by saying that Ukraine and Russia has over time been doing well in producing wheat and other, cereal crops, and we know that these crops are arable crops, and of course they do so well in it that they export a lot into Africa, and of course about $5 billion gets into its importation. So Africa pays them about that amount, roughly that amount. So either it is more or it is a bit less. And of course, Africa has a teeming population. Africa is comprised of Northern Africa, Central Africa, Western Africa, Eastern Africa, and Southern Africa regions. And the population is quite much. So this crisis in Ukraine has really led to a lot. The implication for Africa is something to write. Is something that has really affected, a lot. Hiking food prices, the demand. Of course, amongst the life priority needs, food is always comes number one. Even though I've had heated up arguments where some people say no, it's shelter that comes before food. But we know that food is very important. Okay, coming to the implication and the research, the short term research I carried out on this. Yes, I am very much in touch with West Africa because that's where I happen to originate from. So last year, the Central Bank of Nigeria placed a ban on importation of wheat so that the domestic farmers, so that the smallholder farmers could find a way to, have a solidarity between themselves to produce wheat and also for, to enhance food security. And also remember, it's not just buying of wheat or buying of those cereal crops. It's also, the industries also, depends on them, especially the confectionery industries, the bakeries, and you can imagine if the industries that use wheat to produce bread, to produce, biscuits, snacks, and all of that. If there's no wheat again, no cereals again to service those industries, what would then happen? Yeah. So we have seen systems where there is sustainability, when there's production year in, year out, and off season and out of season. Off season and in season, you get these crops. So it has, that last year it was very challenging, even when that decision by the federal government of Nigeria and the Central Bank of Nigeria was not a bad idea, because of course that is like, okay, let's welcome more producers of these crops so that they will start producing. Of course, technology has to also come in. A lot has to come in. Logistics, and trying to get the market, because before you get into production, a need assessment has to be carried out, and the need assessment has already been carried out. Of course, there is always demand for food, whether cereal, whether leguminous crops, whether even from the livestock. So there's always demand for food, especially now, of course, we have different categories of people, the old, the young, and they all have their nutritional needs. They all have their health needs. And, nutrition is very important. That is where health comes from. Yeah. So also, after last year's experience, last year's ban on importation of wheat led to a lot of things.
Please share with us. We're interested in that.
Yes, just the price. The price of wheat became very expensive. There are farmers who also produce, most of them are smallholder farmers, and they don't really produce enough to service the entire region. Nigeria is made up of 6 geopolitical zones. We have the Southeast Nigeria, we have the South-South, we have the Southwest. Then we have the North-Central, and we have the Northeast and the Northwest. And the huge supplies comes from the North, especially during the dry season period. During production seasons, that's when gluts most times occur. There was disruption of the food supply chain. And, at some point, when, this rearers, the cattle rearers from the North that, used to come with their cattle to graze. So there was that, challenge that some persons seized their commodities and, they had to close up the border. And the South, the southern part of Nigeria really got the heat of it. What happened was that there was no more supplies. That door closed. So that was how the food supply chain was disrupted. And it led to those commodities, those few farmers that produce those commodities down south. Of course, it will not be enough. And the little that are being produced by the people there, of course, the price will be very high. And, we are talking about food. That's where health comes from. That's where nutrition comes from. And, okay.
This commodity, which one are we actually talking about here? Are we talking of cassava? Are we talking of cattle? Are we talking of maize? So which of them actually is lacking in so that the price have become very high? Maybe so that we can compare to see whether if the price of others are low.
Most of it, let me just tell you, from my personal experience, I will still come to the broader picture. I carried out a research on selected vegetables in southeastern states of Nigeria. And when I was carrying out that research, I saw that the channel of distribution connects to the northern part of the country because it was a dry season study. And that study actually brought in a lot of, because, the commodity I was researching on actually was okra vegetable, which the supplies comes from the north. And not just okra, because there are other fruit vegetables that accompany them from north, like onions, like tomatoes, especially when they have produced from the north. The south depends on them. They have a better climate. They are, they are more predisposed to, the good climatic condition. Of course, that even in the northern part of Nigeria, you get those farmers that produce, what do you call it again? Berries. Berries, yes. They produce berries, and they go out of their way to ensure that the berries does not, encounter, spoil, and then they not incur losses. Because the whole idea, the whole goal, the whole idea, the whole objective of farmer is to what? To produce for the market output and product maximization, and then profit maximization at the end of the day. So, and what you have put in, you're expecting something tangible to come in. So there are other produce that comes from the north, even yam, basically most of the food items, and these are essential commodities. Food is an essential commodity. And, and let me tell you, it has a ripple effect. It affects a lot of things. Like we are talking about the Russian and the Ukraine crisis. What is happening in Africa? I'm still coming to my research because I carried out, like I said earlier on, a short-term research which touched on the SADC region, that is the Southern African Development Community countries. And one of my respondents, who is an international trade expert, you know what he said? He told me that actually that they depend on Ukraine for huge supplies, and that this war, if it continues, it will be very, very, very bad. It will be very bad. I can say this and say that again because, in fact, he was on his way to meet with some persons who want to buy wheat from him, and they had to increase the premiums and all of that. So now for the prices, of course, the prices are getting high already now. And of course, the war is stretching. Millions of Africans will be in hunger. Malnutrition will set in. And we're already expecting millions of persons, to be in hunger in these areas which are affected, by the drought. Remember that we are also facing climate change issues. We just came out of, we are still in COVID.
I thought, I thought the COVID has actually disappeared because now we don't hear of it anymore. So, yeah.
For Africa, COVID is, the effect is really minimal in Africa. Yeah, but what of the after effects? What we have from one suffering to the other. So, and we know that Africa's biggest economies are Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa, Algeria, and even Kenya. These are major importers of such commodities, putting them at risk of further spikes in food prices if trade is disrupted. Now, what are we supposed to do now in Africa when this type of trouble, where this type of challenge is really has happened, like in a dilemma? In this dilemma, what we are supposed to do is our government, our leaders, the stakeholders, we need to be serious-minded for once. We need to develop, strategize. Not just the strategy is there. I think that the strategy is there. It's just for us to do what we are supposed to do. Can't we increase production? The smallholder farmers, can't our government empower them? Yes, it is true that corruption is all over the place. And, people are complaining, corruption and this, and, they're, amassing of wealth, misappropriation of funds, paying of lip service and all of that. We've heard a lot of that. We have the private investors and Africans in diaspora groups.
So, so in that, in respect of what we are supposed to do, I think let's look at, for example, these two scenarios, no? Because you made mention of COVID-19, and then now we have the war in Ukraine, which I will just jokingly say that nobody hear of COVID-19 again since the war of Ukraine came up. Let's say the COVID-19 was a shock. We didn't prepare for it because we are talking of the responsibility of the government towards the people now. That is how we want to put it, because we are looking for how to feed the population. And this is a massive project. it is important that the government produce enough food to feed the population without necessarily rely on the outside. So what is stopping us from doing that? That is the question.
Well, Africa exports fruits and vegetables to Russia and Ukraine. I must say that about like 7% of South Africa's citrus goes to Russia, and about 14% of South Africa's apples and pears, goes to Russia as well, even to Egypt and even Egypt and Tunisia also exports fruits and vegetables to Russia. So you can see that the challenge with all these countries is that with all the sanctions that are placed on Russia by the US and European countries, it influences the financial services sector as well. Even if the logistics will not be immediately affected, it will definitely disrupt the payment system to all the exporting countries to Russia. And of course, we reckon that Africa is likely to see disturbances in the supply chains. I have mentioned this, and it's not just a Nigerian thing again, it's now sub-Saharan Africa. You know why I keep mentioning sub-Saharan Africa is that sub-Saharan Africa is a region in Africa. About 54 countries make up sub-Saharan Africa. That region has suffered poverty and more developmental issues than the 5 other countries. Yes, we know that the 5 other countries are basically Libya, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, and Algeria. They are, ahead of these countries of sub-Saharan Africa in many things. And, I mentioned about the supply chain disturbances or disruption in Africa. Of course, that pertains to goods and services that are exported and imported between Russia and Africa. As Russia is slammed with a barrage, of sanctions by critics of its Ukraine invasion. Okay, that is just a little of what we can, talk about.
We need to produce what we eat and eat what we produce. Okay, supposing Russia refused to supply, suppose there is not even war in Russia and Ukraine, but the country, for its own interest, decided to supply food to Africa anymore. Are we going to die of hunger? Do we have alternative? Do we have land? Do we need to import people to come and cultivate the land? What is actually required that we don't have to be able to feed ourselves?
That's a very important question. That question is actually one of the proposals or one of the expression of ideas that I was having with some Dutch persons during the COVID era. And we were trying to say, okay, how can we bring in the culture of home gardens again? How can people be encouraged? How can people come back to having gardens at the back of their houses? When I was growing up, I kept saying it, we had a garden at the back of our house. And it wasn't just at the back of our house. It ran through, a major part of our house at the university campus. And at that time, my mother was very wise that most times she will hire, persons to come and cultivate the land. And I will now enter the farm with her, maybe some other person. But I was, more because of the energy and enthusiasm I was expressing, I had with respect to agriculture. So I will enter the farm and I will plant okra vegetable. I'll plant cassava, I'll plant maize, and all of that. And do you know, we had a lot of harvest. Sometimes we depended on what comes out of the farm. We even plant yams. I tell you, we planted yams. Minister technology, I knew minister technology early in life. I knew how to, sow seeds. I knew how to sow cassava cuttings. I knew, oh my God, do you know I knew a lot? So if we can come back to that culture of taking family, let every family have their own garden. It will go a long way to help.
And what you are talking about, Dr. Ikechi, it's not as if you are talking of 70 years ago. This is only a few years ago. I remember when I was still growing up in Nigeria, only a few years ago, I used to cultivate land myself. Our family used to have farm. That is where we got the major thing from that we eat. Talk of yam, vegetable, because we didn't have the money to buy everything. If we expected that we were going to buy everything from the market, we couldn't do that. It wasn't possible. But we eat fresh food because we harvested from our farm. So since when have we even abandoned this culture of eating what we produce? Because when we talk of this eating what we produce, for us it was natural. We actually ate what we produce. The grass cutter that we cut in the farm, we use it to cook for ourselves. The tomatoes, okra, all this we cultivated. It is not right for people to die of hunger in Africa, where there is land available, where the land is fertile. It is not normal. It is not possible.
Yes, it is a misnomer because it is the height. I call it the height of aberration. An aberration is something that is awkward, something that, like in these developed societies where I found myself, it's like weird. They use the word weird, the extent of weird. How can you how can you be in an environment where you can actually, like it's an opportunity, it's a privilege, it's something that we can actually cash in on. I visited a professor of Igbo language. She is a French woman in Milton Keynes, not far from where I am now. And when I visited her, and with her husband, they have launched their children, so they are just alone. And they served me some potatoes, and the husband came and told me, all these are from my farm. And I was I was amazed.
Look at the joy in it.
Oh my God. I knew them far back while I was growing up at the university, because they were also there. And some of their children are my friends. And, so we had that type of exposure early in life. And even now we have vertical farm initiatives, which is also urban agriculture. One of our students expressed interest, and we were trying to see if we can bring in some of those materials to set it up for him, because he's quite, he's wealthy, he has the money to set up a vertical farm garden, and he has the, constant electricity to power that initiative. So we were looking at that and the costing and everything. He said, I will pay for all this. That type of passion, that type of is what is, and I'm happy that this is also, is also happening. This challenge is happening, like we are facing this crisis now, because somehow it's bringing out people's, people are being stretched, and people are also coming up with, people have to strategize. People have to come up with ways, survival of the fittest. They have to muster every strength and courage, get inspired. I remember in those days while we were growing up, there was a time when petrol was very expensive and we had to resort to using of sawdust and firewood And we could actually, we were going to, it was cheap sauce and food. I saw food cook very efficiently. And I learned a lot as a child. We were growing up there. And, these days, it's very difficult. It's getting a come and see the high crime rates, the ripple effect I mentioned earlier. The ripple effect is that there is high crime rate, joblessness. There is high insurgencies, cases of insurgency, killings here and there because people cannot afford food again. Now,
right.
And also the rich are not getting kinder. The rich are not generous enough. Will they be able to part with just 1,000 naira for a beggar on the street? They will feel that maybe if they do that, they will also be killed or molested. So it's a very dicey situation. And personally, I have stopped blaming the government because we are also part of the stakeholders that must drive this needed and expected transformation. I was also sorry to have, to cut you, but can I say this? I also interviewed some Zambians. I am in a group. When this crisis started, one of the top Zambian politicians, he added me to a WhatsApp group. And that WhatsApp group is all about Russia and Ukraine crisis and the implications for Africa. And how can, I had to also, it was an opportunity for me to also ask questions in that group. And some persons were like, no. It will not, this crisis will not affect Africa.
The crisis affected the United States and continue to affect Europe. Why would it not affect Africa? We are living in the global village. But the question really is, what are we going to learn from it? You see, I want to put the question back again to you in a different way, because we talk of food. Now, what about even defense? If Russia is in crisis with the world today, because that is where we usually get most of our resources from, including even our weapons, if we have to put it like that. But say Russia today decide not to sell his AK-47 to Africa, and they decide not to sell food to Africa. The question is, what is Africa going to do? Because I hate the politics of depending on another person. Don't we have the possibility of able to provide for ourselves from producing our weapon, producing our food, producing our education, our test site? We cannot just be handicapped.
Yeah, we need to learn. You are now provoking me to talk more, because I know some of my childhood friends that are also here in the UK, and some are in the US, some are, all over, in developed countries. Some of them are doing well. Their names are, they are doing well in IT and artificial intelligence. Some of them is in their fingertips. And that is also to tell you that not just them, but also what of the other Nigerians and other Africans, Zimbabweans and Kenyans. Oh my God, can you imagine Ghanaians, Sierra Leoneans? Yeah, Zambians, South Africans, excelling. We are all one Africans. Our skin is black. Can't we do something? Must we keep quarreling amongst ourselves? Must we be behaving as if we don't know that we are here just for a short while? Can't we leave a legacy? Is it just to be given to the less privileged motherless babies home and giving out for charity, which is also not bad, not a bad idea. But how do we quantify all these givings? How do we channel properly? And like I talked about, carrying out a need assessment. How, like I was discussing with one of my childhood friends who is also very he's one of the successful business persons in the world. I wouldn't mention his name, but he said something about Igbo apprenticeship system. And that system, the Igbo apprenticeship system, talks about, how, because it's part of the informal sector that drives transformation currently. This issue, those artisanry, and it's actually a window or a corridor that leads to building up entrepreneurship and creativity and innovativeness, and which has been practiced over time in Southeast Nigeria, which is the commercial nerve center. It was actually, it has been endorsed by the Harvard system or grading or rating. I saw it last year and I was really happy because I know that that part of the economy or that part of the, that sector really contributes a lot. There was a professor who also did that as her inaugural lecture in one of the universities in Nigeria. And I saw that caption in the inaugural. I said, this is actually very important. And when I saw it later on, and when Harvard had published that it's been accepted as a veritable strategy to drive transformation in the informal sector, which why can't we also come through that, take, leverage on that opportunity and build up that system? What about the technology? As I mentioned, we are talking about having a regional infrastructure. Yes, because infrastructure is very important. And we had mentioned about Russia. Can I say that Russia also gives us infrastructure? And now we are working with the African Union's African Continental Free Trade Area agreements, trying to build up a good transport system to promote intra-Africa trade. And of course, in the Red and Mediterranean seas, those materials used in building, some of them are from Russia and Ukraine, I tell you. So, and you had mentioned.
But one thing that is actually very, that should be offending to us, is that all these resources that we need, that the world needs, we have it under our feet. But we are too lazy because we have oil. And this oil, okay, now, how I think the economy functions in this sense is that when the people are suffering, they are about to die, when they will have a leader who will be able to make them work so that they can survive. But there are some countries that are so blessed, they don't need the people to work. In the case of Nigeria, for example, which they usually call the cost of oil, I make reference to a film in one of my earlier video, one of my recent video, which of course you see in many other countries. Because how many people do you need to extract oil? Very few. How much do you get from oil? The money is so high, so you don't need people to be able to extract it. So we need a leader who is really a genuine leader to care for the people, because in this case, you don't really need the people that much to be able to extract these resources, unlike when Nigerian economy depended on agriculture. Because few people cannot produce the agriculture that the country needed. So it was important to develop the people. So what I'm trying to say is that, is it possible that we can actually realize that the oil itself is not really resolving the problem, but empowering the people to work is what is going to resolve the problem? Because it's not about putting food on people's mouth. That is not solving the problem. What we need is to empower people to work so that they can provide food for themselves and then also support the country. It appears as if we don't have anything, but we really have everything. We have oil, we have iron, we have food, our land is fertile, we have petroleum. What is missing? We don't have anything that is missing. Even to say Russia, they go to take resources from Africa too. Are we sick? Are we dumb?
We are not sick, neither are we dull. Over time, we have we have also been part of, contributing to the transformation process in the developed countries. And yes, we are very original people. We are blessed by the same God that's created the other persons, the other people. You mentioned about a country which I like, and that is India. I traveled to India in 2014. Before I traveled to India, my father of blessed memory now he went for checkup. I went with him. I loved to accompany him to the clinic, when he couldn't go alone. So, and the medical doctor happened to have gone to India. So they were discussing about India and how India system has also, is a system that shoulders the entire citizen. It allows the middle class, the upper class, and the lower class system. So actually, they have a plan for everybody, for every class. So, they have that class system. And so when I went there in 2014, that particular trip was actually sponsored by him, my biological father of blessed memory, because I looked for sponsorship I didn't get, and I really wanted to go to India. And he said, "Oh, since you want to go, okay, I will ensure that you go." And I was like, "Okay, I will also pay back then, And I saw everything that the medical doctor was telling him just played out. And you mentioned about how they are approaching development, developing their land. It's still the same principle that Indonesia is doing. Like one of my colleagues at the university, he told me about his experience in Indonesia. And he said, that is the same approach. That's how, Indonesia should be the highest producer or an exporter of oil palm right now in the whole world. And the same Indonesia and Malaysia and all those Shia and the Asian tigers, I call them Asian tigers. They came and borrowed the oil palm seedlings, and they are now doing even better than the Africans where they keep taking it from. So I think it's everyone, we mustn't run away from Africa. Now, can I announce to you that, and to anyone listening to me today, that Africa is highly investable. Africa has been recognized as the fastest or the greatest continent that is highly investable. So I will give kudos to Rwanda. I will give kudos to Kenya. I will give kudos to my country, Nigeria. At some point, I wouldn't give kudos to Nigeria. I will give kudos to Ghana. And I will keep giving kudos to the SADC region, even the South African region. Of course, like I had mentioned, Northern African region, I don't really count them in because they are in they are not in sub-Saharan Africa, but we are all Africans. We accept that we are in the African continent. But most of them, funny enough, they don't even, when you categorize them as Africans, they don't like it. One of my professor friends quarreled with me because I categorized him as, as African. There was a way it happened that I had to pinch myself. I said, okay, let me just be careful, because I also love relationship with colleagues and all of that, whether in my country or outside of my country. So, we've been talking about the issue of Ukraine and all of that, the war issue. I don't know. Maybe can I say that the soil in Ukraine is the third most fertile soil in the whole world? So that's war will bring. So war will bring about global food insecurity and with Africa yet. So you can imagine such a soil to recover from the shocks of the pandemic situation. I, you know, it's something that is actually enough. And okay, South Africa is the most industrialized country in the whole of African continent, and is a very big exporter of agricultural equipment and components to most African countries. Very good. It's having huge investments in Russia and Russia in South Africa. So the impact that the war and economic sanctions in Russia will not only affect food security and Africa's agriculture sector, but other sectors as well.
What do you see maybe changing hand in this area of effect? Maybe might be okay. You made mention of packaging before because food you don't just take food and just ship the food. No, there are a lot of logistics around it. So tell me about some of this effect in other area of the economy.
Like I mentioned about food security and also with respect to imports, which of course will lower. I think I'm seeing a situation that will awaken a lot of, if it's already happening now. Lots of persons from other professions are coming into agriculture, so the window is really open, and agriculture is a very interesting sector. Is a traditional sector and is a primary sector. So it welcomes, there is ease in entry. There's what we call ease in entry. Some sectors may have barriers to entry. Like when you talk about the automobile industries, there's the entry, the extent of entry is not easy, but in agriculture, it's easy, and that's why there's opportunity for micro, small, and medium scale enterprises to actually come in. So smallholder farmers, it welcomes a lot of smallholder farmers. So whether you are rich or poor, you can identify a niche within the agriculture sector to operate or to get livelihood. So a lot of persons, even from the other, like in the medical, a lot of medical doctors are coming back to agriculture. A lot of engineers, a lot of lawyers, and accountants, from other disciplines, they are really coming back. And I tell you, and I'm not mincing words, I'm telling you what is ongoing. And like I even have a network. I also belong to different networks of these things, these people. So, and if you don't do something, you'll be challenged. Even here in the UK, I visited a farm recently, and they have a greenhouse, and the owner is a medical doctor, and we planted lots of items there, potatoes, pepper, tomatoes, and all of that. So, and sometimes the weather is also, because we are also encouraging having a protected farming system. So yeah, so there's an awakening for Africa for us to practice agriculture more, taking it more seriously, not because I know so many persons who come in who are saying that they are farming, but their minds are not really there. I'm not talking of such persons. I'm talking of serious-minded people who are putting in all the inputs, who are coming in, going, visiting their farms every time. Every time, I mean, maybe on a daily basis, or even if you are not visiting your farm on a daily basis, can't you employ someone or form cooperatives? Cooperative farming. Cooperative has to do with getting people that you can work with. Like I mentioned, it's like a marriage thing. Finding someone to marry, you need to take time. You need to understand. You need to be sure. You need to be mature. So when a farmer wants to enter into cooperative agri or wants to practice cooperative agriculture, you must look for your type. If you are sincere, look for sincere persons, because that is the challenge for African cooperatives. Many, like I was at Ubiaja, at the federal, at the food crop production technology transfer station, and the staff told me clearly that they will not enter into cooperative. That is not what they are. Yeah, because of the issue of trust. Their experiences. So they have trust issues. So, but in the US, when I traveled to the US in Alabama, and I visited two prominent universities, Auburn and Tuskegee, they were asking me about cooperative, and they were really, really ready to welcome me to practice cooperative, and also to teach cooperative, and also to join cooperative, and also to even, contribute to, in one way or the other, cooperative before I returned. And I tell you, I'm still in touch with them. Their cooperatives are thriving. They are encouraging. Look at, a lot is happening. During the COVID-19, do you know that the American government, how their government was really, really encouraging them? Well, we are talking about another, thing altogether.
Well, anyway, they're all important. They're all important. And especially when you start talking of this cooperative, of course, I live in Italy. I live in the northern part of Italy, which is Verona. Of course, the whole of Italy is an agricultural economy, that they pay a lot of attention to agriculture, and in this part of Italy, there is a lot of attention to wine production, for example. Of course, not only wine, but that wine production. If you go into it, you see that it is form of different corporation, different consortium, group of people. It's not just one person. You might see a farm, but that farm belongs to a group of people. In this way, they're able to seek loan from the government. Of course, the government is always there to help them. So I completely agree with you that is the way to go. But how to sell this idea to the people I think that is where the problem is now, because people still believe that as an individual they can do it. But the truth is that they cannot do it. Because you are going to have farming is expensive because it's a big business and because it's a very vital part of the economy. We are no longer talking of farming with obsolete tools or going there and begin to till the land. No, that is not the type of farming we are talking about. We are talking about farming where you are going to use machines, and machines are expensive. But in that said Nigeria, that is a lot of money. Only individual cannot go there to the bank and they will not give it to you because you don't have the requisite. But if you organize yourself, they will give it to you. How do we sell the idea? We are moving towards the end. I know we have spent a lot of time here, but this is very important. How do we sell this idea to the people that this is their only winning strategy? It works everywhere and it must work in Africa.
You mentioned something about agriculture being difficult or something like that. Agriculture is not, yes, it's not an easy practice. Agriculture is also easy. It depends on how you see it. I know agriculture takes time. For example, what I mean by it takes time. When you plant a crop, depending if it's an annual crop, it will still take within 1 year. Those arable crops and horticulture crops can, within that time, take that time to grow. And when it comes out, when it's time to harvest, then you are happy. But there has to be a system, like everything that we are talking about has to align with SDG. It has to align with sustainability. It has to align with a system, a systematic thing. And if we can, from that angle, begin to talk about agriculture in that dimension, then we will be solving some, great puzzle. The way to solve the problem, the way to solve the challenge is that persons should identify where their interest is. We have the crops, we have the livestock, we have the forestry, we have the fishery. We need to encourage forestry as well, because why forestry is important is because forestry is like a massive crop agriculture, a land, a plant, like having everything is in the forest. You can imagine. And do you know that that Africa and Russia and Ukraine has how does Africa sponsor these two countries? What do we enjoy? We enjoy from, we had already mentioned, agriculture and tourism. Can't we build up our agriculture and tourism? Don't we know? Many persons want to come to Africa to invest. It's not as if you were asking about the way out. We need to ensure security. People need to be sure that when they come to Africa, they will be safe. Recently, we had a lot of delegates from the US, from the UK, from all over the world. They came to Ghana at the Wakanda village. And in fact, I was invited, but I didn't go because I was also busy with what I was doing. But the people that went, many of them are my friends, and they were sending pictures that I was watching. How they call them, and a lot of awareness were being created about Africa. That type of awareness is very important. And we are telling them Africa is safe. Come to Africa and invest. Come to Africa and invest. Invest meaningfully. Invest in our universities. I am in the education sector as well. Our research needs funding. Our students need scholarship. They need, especially those in agriculture, in nutrition. Those who are in forestry, who are in fisheries. In fact, I'm always looking out for collaborators, partners, whether in the university or outside of the university, not for myself, but for those I mentor. I'm looking out for opportunities for them. I am actually pressing buttons. Most times I do recommendations. Recently, something funny happened. A professor, an emeritus professor at the Imperial College, contacted me. I sent him a message some years ago, about 3 years ago. And the message I sent him was, with, regarding one of my mentees who has expressed interest to do her master's and PhD abroad. And because she was the best student in her set, I said, okay, I will help you. And I contacted this professor, and this professor, was just recently writing me and telling me, okay, and sent me an email of another professor who is not an emeritus professor like him, who is working, who is, substantive professor there, and said, okay, contact this professor. He has some funding for your former students or for your students. And I smiled. I said, the lady in question, she has already graduated. She has finished her master's. She's doing her PhD now. And I had to tell him what I want now, what I will need from him. So you can imagine how many years it took him to respond. And now there is funding for the student. But yes, I could have recommended another person, maybe later on. Yeah, but that is all what we are trying to do. And there are many persons who have these opportunities, who can actually give out scholarships. And what are you waiting for? There you go, we are there. You can contact us. Contact us, and we are not incommunicados. We know where to, we are sincere enough. We will not eat your money. We will not divert it to do nonsense. We will put it to good use. Yeah, so which way out? We are asking which way out. We need to also paint a very good picture. We need to rebrand. Africa has to be rebranded all over Africa, whether Northern Africa, whether all parts of Africa. We need to rebrand Africa, and we need to change the perception problem. We need to identify policy must change as well. We need to enforce the right policies, which will favor farmers. We need to encourage farmers. We need to come up with technology that directly, will help to, emancipate farmers, and also make smallholder farmers to scale up. And we need to, of course, that the voice, like we were talking about cooperative agriculture, when we are more in number, then what happens? We will be able to receive it. Yeah, like you were talking about those farmers in Italy. Yes, Professor Maurizio, at the University of Bologna in Italy there. Yeah, he used to spearhead a training program, and most people attend. In fact, in the past, I wanted to also attend that training program. He's also an agro-economist like myself. And, those type of training programs on how to train people on this cooperative farming is very, very important, because it's an easy way to receive intervention. That is when they can actually, not just intervention, they can actually get their needs met, because people join the cooperatives for various reasons, either for social reasons, for cultural reasons, majorly for economic reasons. And we have different types of cooperatives. Of course, we are talking about farmers cooperative or agricultural cooperative. And within the agricultural cooperative, we have the producers cooperative, we have the marketers cooperative, and we have the consumers cooperative as well. And there are other, small, pockets of other cooperatives that also operate within the space of agriculture.
Because there is a conflict in Ukraine, people in Africa are worried that they might not have food to eat. And it's not really supposed to be like that. I know that it affects other countries. What would be your kind of recommendation for the point of view of an African, what we can do so that the impact can be less heavy on us?
The whole idea is to come back to farming, encourage farmers, try, like the issue of trying to work with the ministries of some registered registered farming organizations. I know Ministry of Agriculture is also very important. Farmers should be encouraged to register. Most farmers do not like to register in the ministries of agriculture. And we have always encouraged them to register because, for example, in December, we had a workshop. It was a USAID, a USAID workshop in USAID, United States Agency for International Development, and, with World Fish and Federal Ministry of Agriculture in my country, Nigeria. And also, it was actually a spearheaded research by some researchers, agro researchers at the Michigan State University. And I was asked to facilitate that session. And, it was really a swell time to meet with farmers themselves, poultry farmers, fish farmers, or fishers. We call fish farmers fishers now.
Fishers.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a very good. This is a very appropriate medium to say this about that the nomenclature for fish farmers is now fishers. Yeah. So during that session, staff from the Ministry of Agriculture and Fish Farmers Association of Nigeria and other, farming, farming bodies, they were present and they were expressing their challenges with respect to inform farmers and to tell farmers about this, the program that we had. And they were supposed to come. And we expected more farmers. And I never knew that we would give them some money at the end of the training. I knew about it, but some persons did not know. They were just invited. So, and at the end, they were given some money, transport and allowance, and also good food, and it was like an incentive. And they were like, at the end, the people that came were, oh, when is the next one? And I smiled and said, no, it doesn't come all the time. So, you see, we need to encourage, we need to find a way. If something is not done now, it will be very hard. By the time, there are people who are like messiahs. They have been sent to transform the agriculture sector. They have been sent to be part and parcel of those who will drive transformation. Like, I will always give kudos to Dr. Additional, Adeomi Additional. Oh, Akiwomi, what's his name again? Maybe Akiwomi Additional also. It's such men who have, done greatly. There are many other persons in the agriculture sector who are playing great roles. They need to be, to be given, a pat on the back from time to time, because, it's not easy to find such leaders. During when he was the Minister for Agriculture, he ensured that telephones be given to all farmers in the rural area, even though some, when I mentioned it the other time to my students, and they were saying, sir, not all farmers got those telephones. Yes. So we need to have a program for our students that are studying agriculture. We need to also not just program, a scholarship program, some waiver given to them, some incentive for farmers, finding a way to identify them. And the agriculture space is quite broad. Is quite broad because, agriculture connects from production to the final consumer. So agribusiness is also a form of, is also part of agriculture. But the thing is that agribusiness most times can be primary, secondary, tertiary. So sometimes it cuts off some practices of agriculture, makes it okay. For example, okay, I'm not in another food and agricultural marketing class, but I can tell you that, the agribusiness or the agriculture sector is quite broad. It's everywhere. It's in the airport. It's along the road. It's in the building. It's everywhere. I mean, it's in schools. It's even in the air. It's even in the space. The agribusiness, it's very, very important. So, like I said, it's primary, it's traditional, and it's also real sector of the economy. So, we should try to encourage production and food production, and also build up factories where foods that have been produced, so that to minimize wastes, because there's so much losses of food losses. Can you imagine that we are trying to look at how food losses, trying to extrapolate or quantify or analyze what is wasted when crops are lost after harvest, because it's after harvest then we start incurring post-harvest losses. When you lose a crop, can you imagine that you have lost also all the nutrients that you put in, all the time you have lost it for a farmer? So, it runs into trillions of naira. For example, in Nigeria, trillions of naira is wasted every year.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ikechi. It really has been very interesting. The conversation is very important. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewanfo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.